of the museum, and my colleagues asked me to tell you something about our audiovisual projects, yes, and what we are doing in general.
Thank you.
I don't know what my colleagues already have told you. In case I will repeat something you already...
I will tell you.
You listen, I'm sorry. To my mind, we are here in our museum, in the place, one of the first places in Europe where the real audiovisual anthropology had started. I called the period in between end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century as the period of the first media revolution. We are having all these gadgets with us and going to the expeditions, bringing back now hundreds and thousands of photographs and videos and God knows what. We are totally forgotten that in the very beginning of the 20th century, the photographers got for the first time the possibility to bring to the field their photo cameras and to bring to the field the systems which gave them the possibility to record the sound. The very first, very simple, but they were very enthusiastic about it. In spite, this was, in comparison with what we are doing now, how we are living now, this caused a lot of problems. For example, they had to put all the photo equipment on 3 cameras in general, and as to the budget of the expedition, it was 1/3 of all the costs, and there was hundreds and hundreds of glass plates which were used to make any photos, and they have to bring laboratory with them. But we are, our collection has thousands and thousands of the photographs of this time, because in the very end of the 19th century, a group of real enthusiasts were working in this museum. Professor and full member of the Russian Academy, Wilhelm Raglov, he was of German origin, but got Russian citizenship and was called Vasily Vasilyevich Raglov, became the director of the museum. And this was the time when he decided to make of this museum really a research center. But there were no specialists, good specialists in the field. Universities were not preparing many. But this was the time where a lot of Russian revolutionaries were sent to Siberia. And they had their plenty of time. And they started learning local languages and sent their articles to the scientific journals, yeah? And all the bureaucracy in St. Petersburg in those times was, not all, but 70% was of German origin, from Baltic states. And Raglov made his best to help those people who were in exile in Siberia to come back to St. Petersburg solved all the problems with the police, and many of them became employees here, they were working here. And London was Mr. Dudin, who was also, he got something like 10 years of exile to Siberia. But Radloff was in the expedition, and he was very good drawer, make a lot of pictures. And Radloff used him as a painter in his expedition. Then he realized that this young guy is very talented, so he made his best to bring him to St. Petersburg, solved all his political problems, and he became the student of Russian Academy of Arts. And not only the student of Russian Academy of Arts, but the student of famous Russian painter whose name is Ilya Repin. And he became a fantastic painter, but because of this connection with Radloff, he came to the museum, and he realized a lot of possibilities coming with this, with this new equipment, and he organized the first laboratory here. Museum got special equipment, and not only photo cameras, but also kino cameras, I don't know. It was also huge, and museum had not enough money, but they bought it in a credit. So the expeditions were sent not only to the territories of Russia, but to India, to Ceylon, to God knows where, equipped with all this, in those times, fantastical equipment. Now, as for the audio collection, they are mostly stored in very close from us in Pushkin Institute of Russian Literature. They have huge special storeroom for audio. As for the photo collection, you can find it in something like 40,000. You were able to find on our site of the museum. It's in English, you can see, and you can try to find people of East Asia through the expeditions, through the territories, through the names of the people, through the names of the photographers, so it and even through the subjects. You can try it. It's easily to find, and I can show you if you would like special.
When do these expeditions take place? When do these expeditions take place?
When?
When, yeah.
It was very first years of the 20th century.
The first years, yeah.
Yes, before the First World War.
Yeah, okay, so
Because in many cases we had problems for several scholars to return back because of the First World War. Our expedition was in India, for example, and our expedition was in South America, for example. And to take back the collections we found, the photographs, and several important items were lost because of the situation, but many, in spite of all these problems, came back. So I'm, as to me personally, I'm specialist in Arabic and Islamic studies and in Central Asia. So as for the Central Asia, we have something like 100,000 of archival photographs. This is really huge archive which is giving fantastic possibilities to work with. But we realized we published several books on the problem, plenty of articles and many books devoted to the problems. And we found out that, surely you know, that we are unable to use these archival photographs as 100% source of reality. I can explain. There are a lot of photographs of women from Central Asia. A lot. But if we use them, these photographs, to reconstruct, for example, the women dress in Bukhara or in Samarkand in the end of the 90s, beginning of the 20th century, it would be an incorrect task, because 90% of these women were prostitutes. Because it was impossible to make photo of ordinary woman. And please imagine that you have a collection of prostitute photographs of the 1990s, and trying to reconstruct the dress of European women. This is the project. It is very problem. It is very difficult. This was these kinds of problems can be found easily. But for example, there are many other ones. If we found a lot of photographs connected with this or other subject. For example, something like several dozens of photographs of bacha. These were the young boys dressed like a woman and singing, dressed like a girl. And it's, how to say it, Russian photographers came and they saw this as the, how to say it, something extraordinary, and everybody knew.
Where was that?
Also, it was in Central Asia.
Central Asia.
In Central Asia, yes, in Samarkand, all over the Central Asia, this named bacha. They were dancing, playing, yeah, but, so we have something like dozens and dozens of photographs of bacha. In reality, this phenomenon was not as important as the size of the material we have. So we have, in many cases, we have to evaluate these very important points in order to reconstruct the reality, to use the photographers, the historical source. We are unable to do it just like this. We have a photo, it's reality, 100%. Again. It was another really fantastic project in early Soviet Union. Here in St. Petersburg, because of these great people who were working in the museum, they were ethnographers with all their heart. And there were very many young students who decided to follow them. And a young boy and a girl got married and left Leningrad for several decades to live in, I don't know, in the Far East or in the far North, together with the ethnicity, this or that. They were making the alphabets for these people, making the copying their folklore, and we are now, because of several, in many cases, this fantastic material was not published. Now we had established the special series which is called Kunstkammer Archive, and 6 volumes of this kind were published, but this was also the time of the rise of Russian and Soviet art, you know, Rodchenko, you know, Kandinsky, all these people, and most of these painters were commissaries, communist commissars in the very beginning, because they fully shared the necessity to destroy the old art, classical art, and to establish something new. And many of these people took part in the project entitled Kino Atlas of the USSR. So in 1932 there was already 100 documentaries made all over the territory of the former Soviet Union. And they are fantastically interesting. They are stored now in Krasnogorsky archive close to Moscow. And I very much hope that next year we have started a big project of recovering all this material, because they are without sound. And only the specialists can explain what we are able to see. Every piece had to be studied by the specialist in ethnography and anthropology. Otherwise, it is, for example, we have a fantastic documentary devoted to the mystery of Tsam, Buddhist mystery. I had an experience, we were looking at this documentary, and a specialist had described this is this, this is this, this is this. This was, it was really fantastic, so we have to do this in this way. I believe we were able to start this important project. When I was postgraduate student, I for the first time took part in the expedition in South Yemen. It was Democratic Republic of the South Yemen, under full Soviet control, and was very peaceful. We were able to travel all over the country and have fantastic possibilities to study. And Aden, for many years, was the place where you can buy cheaply a lot of equipment. A lot of equipment, videos, photos, and for the first time I came there, it was something like 1986, and I came from the Soviet Union, and I for the first time saw video camera. It was huge. It was extremely expensive, but this was, and I was able to take him in my hands, and probably the next day after I saw by my own eyes for the first time this equipment, we came to one of the sacred places to start the pilgrimage to it. And I have a Russian Zenit camera with 36 frames. And it was so fantastically interesting that in 2 minutes I finished everything. And then I was standing like this and just putting my notes and dreaming about the camera. And since then I did my best to use all possible equipment in my expeditions. And we organized many of them with professional photographers, with professional, for example, this person, Alexander Solovyov, he's fantastic video operator. And he's now helping me to, in this place, but usually it is difficult to find him because he's doing his job somewhere on the islands of the Pacific, I don't know,
Oh, yeah.
for the Russian First Channel, something like this. And very quickly, I understand that we had now another problem. We brought hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photographs, thousands. It was professional photographer, then me, that everybody. So I collected, and we had no time even to sort it. And then we brought a lot of video, hours. And this was a challenge. What to do with this huge amount of material. And quickly I realized, the period of 1986, I caused the second media revolution. When I for the first time I saw this video camera. And then I personally was happy using all this equipment, obtaining new possibilities, and I realized personally how happy were our predecessors who used these huge cameras, and I found out that we now have a fantastic possibility to play with this huge amount of material. In different spheres, and I would like to present just one project for you, to realize what we are doing. So, this was one of my projects. I would like this on the material I brought. And many years ago, I was organizing the exhibition in Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I have seen the Persian miniature, Jonah and the Whale, 19th century. Then I was in Pinakothek of Munich, and I have seen the picture by young Bruegel the Elder, Jonah coming from the river. Then I was in a Russian monastery in Siberia, and I have seen Russian icon, Jonah coming from the river. Then my friend had showed me the picture of Jewish painter, Russian painter immigrant. So, a Russian Jew came to the port of Haifa, coming from the whale. And next door from me, a fantastic scholar is working, whose name is Yuri Berezkin. And he is making the database of the world mythology. I decided to find out, to look through this myth all over this huge database. And I find out that there are no single place in the world without this myth. As you see, the story lives in the cultures of Europe, the Baltic, Scandinavian region, the Volga region, the Balkans, the Caucasus, in Asia Minor, Western, Central and Southwestern Asia, in Iran and India, along the territories of Siberia, including the coast of Arctic Sea, Arctic Ocean, in China and Korea, on Sakhalin and in Japan, on the islands of Pacific Ocean, in Indonesia and Philippines, all over the Americas, from the Arctic regions to California, from Mexico to Patagonia, and everywhere too in Africa. Its versions can be found in Assyrian and Babylonian myth, as well as in ancient Greek ones, in the Old and New Testament, in the Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet, in the Kalevala and Shahnameh, in a number of Muslim cosmographies and in the major texts of Kabbalah, the Zohar. In various versions of the myth, the protagonist could be swallowed by different fish, sea and river animals, and there are many. You can see. And the basic content of the myth is a return to the womb for correct transformation, rebirth. Once I returned back from my expedition and I felt ill. I was brought to the hospital and nobody knows what I had. I was put like a ball or something. I was put in a special box, fully isolated. And nobody can solve my problem, and I was half dying and writing my book to make my daughter publish it. Then we invited a very good physician from the military institute, and he was speaking with me for 3 hours, asking me to tell him what had happened in my life this day. And then I told him I had a problem with my tooth. I don't know how to say it in English. And it is disappeared. He said, okay, please take your tooth out because it caused infection in your blood. But by this day, the doctors told me that I had a kind of sarcoma. So I was very hard finishing my book, and I realized that this was my way. This room in the hospital was my way. And then I published a book about 8 most important commentaries of the commentaries of the Quran from the 8th century until 20th century. And these 8 people, as far as we know the biographies of 4 of them,